It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. This is the show that's about all things University of Louisville. And we'll be talking about some interesting topics coming up today, because we're going to be talking about e-cigarettes. They exploded virtually unregulated onto the market as a less harmful way to smoke. But are they less harmful? There's finally some research on e-cigarettes and their potential dangers, and we will talk about it with a UofL professor. But first, students at the University of Louisville get unbelievable opportunities to see the world, study in foreign lands, and go places they never thought they'd get to see. And that's what happened in early February for a group of UofL students in the Sports Administration program. They went to the Super Bowl. Here to talk about that adventure are Megan Shreffler, Jen Presley. They're both faculty in the SPAD program, as well as Monica I'm going to blow this name several times. Monica McConaughey. You'd think I'd be able to get it because there's a prominent actor named Matthew McConaughey that I should be able to get this, who is one of the students on the Super Bowl trip. So welcome to you all.
Thank you.
And I'll promise, Monica, I won't blow your name again.
Okay.
All right. Megan, you were the organizer of this, right? You're a faculty member over there in this.
Yes, definitely. I actually went to the University of Minnesota for my PhD, so I was able to reach out to a former professor I worked with to see if she knew of any opportunities. And we reached out on Friday, and she said, yes, you can come and bring some students, but I need names by Monday at noon. And
So this was like 9 days before the Super Bowl.
No, it was in December. I'm sorry.
Okay. I thought that you meant like you had 9 days to get flights and everything to Minnesota.
No, it was in December. I had reached out, and she said, yes, definitely, we have an opportunity for you guys, but I need names by noon on Monday. So it was a scramble to get everything organized. And Jen and I actually started here at U of L at the same time, and so we've kind of been become good friends, and we have organized several trips together from our time working with the SPAD Association, which is a student-led group. And so I went straight to her and said, I need your help to make this happen.
Wow. So you got to go to the Super Bowl. All right. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Jen, why don't you kind of describe what the SPAD program is? What everybody on campus calls it SPAD, but it's a Sports Administration program. So what is that?
Sure. So we train professionals in the sport industry. So I see here in your office, you have one of our students. We're training him and helping him to work in sport broadcasting. We have students who are interested in getting into facilities, into managing athletics. We have a lot of students who are interested in D1 athletics. It's primarily one of the reasons maybe they come here, because we do have such a prominent athletic department. We have a lot of interns that work in our athletic department. Youth programming, youth sports, YMCA, rec sports. So our job is to teach them the business side of sport, the business aspects, and prepare them to get into a different variety of sport professions.
And Megan McConaughey, you are the grad student here, so why did you come to the University of Louisville? What are you learning out of the SPAD program?
Well, I came to U of L just because I'd heard so much about the SPAD program, and it had a really good reputation. And I actually had the opportunity to be an Adidas intern last year, so that those two things combined, it was like, this is the perfect package. Let's go try this out. And it's been the most amazing experience ever. I work with amazing faculty. I have an amazing cohort. We all want to go into different things, like she said. I think I'm like the only one that actually wants to go into pro sport. A lot of my cohort wants to go into like the academic side and athletic advising. So yeah, it's interesting, all the people that you meet, and like you get to network and grow in the field with them.
So you're learning how to be a manager, how to deal with people, how to schedule events, all that kind of stuff comes with your degree in the SPAD program, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, now I want to talk a little bit more to you at the end of our interview here about what you plan to do and what you want to do. But let's go back to the Super Bowl. All right. So Megan, you guys, you get the names in by Monday. You round up how many students to go to the Super Bowl?
We had 12 students.
Okay. 12, give or take.
We have a PhD student who came as a faculty leader, so we're counting him as a faculty.
Okay,
Yes.
so you round up 12 students in record time in 2 or 3 days. Say, hey, you want to go to the Super Bowl? Is
Yes.
that pretty much how it happened?
Definitely. It was an email out on that Friday saying, if you're interested, I need to hear from you before 9 a.m. or something on Monday. And what we learned from this experience is that students don't always read their emails over the weekend. And
If you had texted them, they would have gotten it.
exactly. And I did in my email tell them to text each other when they saw the email. But I think that was the biggest takeaway from students who missed out on the opportunity is to always read your emails.
Oh, there you go. Lesson learned, right?
Yes.
All right, so for those that read their emails and got back to you and said, I want to go to the Super Bowl, what were they going to do? What did you tell them they were going to do at the Super Bowl?
Well, initially, we didn't know what they were going to do. We just knew that we were working with PepsiCo and the NFL, and we knew we were going to be green ambassadors.
Green ambassadors?
Yes, green ambassadors. So you can leave that up to the imagination of what a green ambassador might be. So everybody sort of had the assumption that we were kind of going to be picking up trash. But ultimately, it ended up being a really great experience. But initially, we were just told, you're going to be a green ambassador for PepsiCo.
Okay. And then, so you started working out the details. And what'd you find as you were moving along before you ever left for Minnesota? What'd you find in terms of what you were going to do, what was going to be the pain in the butt, that kind of stuff?
Quite honestly, the whole planning period was somewhat of a logistical nightmare just because we were working with a staffing company, not directly with the NFL or PepsiCo. And we actually had a couple of students that had indicated interest in going with us, but the staffing company failed to submit their materials. And the NFL requires you to go through a FBI background check in order to get your credentials, and so that was a little disappointing. But we were able to secure an Airbnb and work out travel arrangements. The students with Professor Presley driving took a van up. So she might be able to tell you a little bit more about that experience. I flew up for personal reasons.
Well, maybe I need to talk to Monica about the bus trip up. So, Monica, you're the student here, and so you're riding in a bus or a van or something to Minneapolis, which is what, 12-hour drive, I'm guessing?
Yeah, 12 with 15 people.
15
in the
passenger van.
And 2 bags per person.
So you're like a Division III basketball team that was going from Nebraska to Wyoming or something.
Yeah,
right?
well, I played D2 volleyball, so I was
perfect.
in my element. I was loving it. I'm like, I love being crammed in the back of a van. This is awesome.
All right, so you finally get up there, though, and you're green ambassadors for PepsiCo. Mm-hmm. So what did you do? Monica, what did you do?
So that Saturday we went through like a pretty long training.
So this is the Saturday before the Super Bowl?
Saturday before. They brought us in. We met like our team lead. So they at least broke us up into teams of about 8 to 10 people. And we had a team lead who kind of guided us through the process. But they really just emphasized like the goals of the NFL and their sustainability program going forward and like how they want each facility to increase its sustainability and all of that throughout the next couple years. And so the stadium being brand new is one of the most sustainable facilities right now in the NFL. And so we met with their stadiums, head of sustainability and all of that. But basically we were just told, like, you're here to increase the fan experience. Like, be friendly, customer service, while educating them about what our goals are as far as sustainability goes.
So I got to ask you, Jen, when you guys are up at the Super Bowl, did you check in with Teddy Bridgewater or did you call Gorky Zhang, who plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves? Did you check in with either of those two?
We tried, actually.
Did you really?
Yes. Actually, I taught Teddy when he was here, so we did try to reach out to him, and we also, a couple of faculty members tried to reach out to him, but I think he was out of town. He was in Florida. So we didn't have the chance to meet with Teddy Bridgewater, but we were really hoping to.
And we did get to a Wolves game, though, and when he scored, the Cards chant did erupt in the arena.
That's cool. That's
From all
cool.
15 of us.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
All right, and so you're at the game. You're telling the folks in your section how to recycle and those kinds of things. Did you get to watch the game? Well, go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, I was actually up in the 300 level, and so the view was pretty awesome. Like, I was straight down, I could see every play. So our team leader emphasized, like, it's okay to turn around and watch big plays. And we had the TVs everywhere around us, so you were pretty involved in the game atmosphere as well.
Okay. What do you want the students to take out of this, Megan? What did you hope that they got out of this experience?
We just really wanted to expose them to stuff that we talk about in the classroom. So working mega events, sustainability efforts, event management from a huge perspective. I mean, there were so many people there, and it wasn't just the game itself. It was the day before the game and all of the events going around the city, even though it was feels like negative 24 outside. And so just really seeing the entire mega event experience from the management perspective.
Jen?
Oh, I just wanted to add that the Super Bowl itself has 10,000 volunteers. So it was a really interesting experience for the students to see we were a small group. I think we had 250 volunteers working the Rush to Recycle campaign for PepsiCo and NFL, so it's a small group. However, there was 10,000 volunteers that the students really got to see. How does this work? What happens? Where are the logistics? What are the credentialing look like? So I think all of the aspects of that were really visible to the students, and I think it helps them put it in, just like Dr. Shreffler said, put it into perspective what we're teaching in the classroom.
So Megan McConaughey, you ready to go out and run a big event? Like if the NCAA tournament comes to Louisville basketball tournament, you ready to run it by yourself? You ready to go?
By myself? I don't know. I might need these two to step in and help me. That was the biggest event I've ever worked. I've worked Final Fours. I've worked Senior Bowl for a whole week, but this all in one day, huge. It was ridiculous, the number of people that were in that venue.
And what did you learn out of this? What'd you take out of it?
The importance of planning and organizing and communicating properly, I would say, and just that.
So you're bashing the company that didn't get the two student stuff?
I'm
Is that what
just
you're doing
saying,
here?
That's 10,000 volunteers. Like, you just got to have people in the right place, and it needs to be communicated what everyone's role is, and just, I guess, the importance of that.
And what would you tell folks about this experience and the whole SPAD program at the University of Louisville? Is this what separates UofL from other schools that offer sports administration programs?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely separates them. This is why we're one of the top ranked in the country. That's why people come here, is to get experiences like this.
Megan?
Yes, definitely. So I'm actually the coordinator of the master's program, and we are ranked 6th in the country right now. And this is one of the reasons why, is because we provide these opportunities for the students, not just to experience it, to build their own resumes, but also to network and make a name for themselves as well as for our program. And because of the work that we did while we were there, we were invited back to Atlanta next year. And so they will definitely be checking their emails to make sure that they are invited to that trip in a much warmer location.
And Jen Presley, are there jobs out there in sports administration for students that graduate from UofL? Are there enough jobs out there?
Oh, of course. There's the sport industry, as you know, is growing at a rapid pace, and the jobs are growing at a rapid pace. The only thing that we always tell our students is you have to separate yourself from everybody else in the room, because everybody loves sport and everybody wants to work in sport. So what we try to train people is what skill set are you gonna have that's gonna be different? And I think this type of experience, putting the Super Bowl on your resume, is a great opportunity to separate yourself from everybody else in the room and ultimately get that job.
And Monica McConaughey, I told you I was going to ask you about what you want to do. You said you want to go into pro sports.
I do.
What do you want to do?
I actually want to work in the NFL, either in marketing, sales, community relations, any of those avenues. My background's in marketing, so we'll see. Hopefully that is happening soon.
And you're a grad student right now.
Yes, I graduate in May.
Okay. So you got to go find a job.
I'm working on that currently. Got a couple interviews going on, so we'll see.
Okay. Colts, maybe?
No,
Not that close?
Probably not that close.
Not that close? All right. Well, sorry to hear that. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, so if you want to go to Buffalo.
I would love to go to Buffalo, actually. I wouldn't mind that at all.
You can talk to Eric Wood.
There we go.
He's back
yes.
in town. So there you go. All right. Good deal. Monica McConaughey, Megan Shreffler, and Jen Presley, thanks for being on the program. Appreciate it. You've seen electronic cigarettes. They look kind of funny, but put off smoke just like the real thing. Well, Dr. Dan Conklin from the UofL School of Medicine has been doing some research on e-cigarettes, and he's here to talk about the latest research, which there hasn't been a whole lot of, involving e-cigarettes. Right, Dan?
Well, that's right. The chronic effects of e-cigarettes in humans are yet to be determined because they're relatively new in the marketplace, and so we don't know about the chronic health effects. What has been done are studies in animal models that we do here at UofL.
Mice, I assume?
We use mice. They have changes in the vasculature that resemble atherosclerosis in humans. And so we can do studies in animals and look at models of chronic disease in humans. And our findings in those studies, in short, are that e-cigarettes or their aerosols exposed in animals increase this atherosclerosis. And that would be a warning sign.
That's on your heart, right? What is that?
It's throughout the whole vasculature, but primarily we look at the aorta, which is your largest blood vessel, because we can quantify that much better than any other place in the body.
What is it about e-cigarettes that make them so attractive? I mean, why are people moving to e-cigarettes?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, they're convenient. It's much easier just to vape on the e-cigarette. You don't have to light up, so you don't need a match. So they're very convenient. Many of them don't give off an odor of smoke, so you can kind of get away with vaping in a variety of locations. Of course, that is restricted depending on the.
Well, some places it is. Some places it isn't.
Some places it isn't. And then, of course, the flavorings. There's over 7,000 recorded flavorings, and these appeal to a broad swath, but including youth. Things like cotton candy and gummy bear, cherry crush. These flavors are made to entice younger folks.
And for folks who are listening who don't know what e-cigarettes are, and there may be a lot of people out there, I don't know, try and describe them. They're essentially, you got a little device that hooks into the cigarette, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But how does it work that you don't suck in as much as you do with a regular cigarette or a regular cigar, or do you?
Well, that depends on what particular constituent you're looking at. But essentially, they're a battery and then a component that holds a liquid and a heating element. Think of it as a coil,
Right.
and it wraps around a wick that contains the liquid. And as it's heated, it evaporates the liquid and makes the smoke or aerosol. We like to call it an aerosol. It has particles and vapors. So it's not just a vapor. It would be proper to call it a smoke. But anyway, that's the simplest description.
Right. Oh, that's a pretty good description. But it doesn't have these e-cigarettes, since they're a vapor, essentially, or an aerosol. They have nicotine in them, right?
Correct.
But they don't have tar and some of the other things that traditional cigarettes have, correct?
That's true. And tar was often the associated component of cigarettes that was related to lung cancer. And so there is a large debate, or maybe I would say more of a consensus, that there will be a reduction in risk for cancer-causing agents that are related to, we'll put in quotes, air quotes, the tar. However, other components, other constituents in the aerosol, such as formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, are found at similar levels in cigarette smoke as well as e-cig aerosol. And these are known carcinogens in their own right, but also cardiovascular toxins. And that's one of the things we're studying here.
We're talking with Dr. Dan Conklin, who's from the School of Medicine at the University of Louisville. He also works at the Diabetes and Obesity Center within the School of Medicine. And we're talking about e-cigarettes and the studies that have and have not been done on these e-cigarettes. I think what you just said was there appears to be a consensus that e-cigarettes are safer than regular cigarettes. Is that fair or not?
Well, I wouldn't phrase it like that.
How would you say it?
Well, what I would say is because of the reduction in certain constituents that are associated with lung cancer, tobacco-specific nitrosamines are almost eliminated from e-cigarette aerosols. One would argue that the risk for lung cancer would be reduced with e-cigarette use. This does not mitigate risk toward cardiovascular disease, which is what we're interested in. So the problem with saying something is safer is that you think that because you reduce cancer, you're automatically going to reduce other diseases, which is not the case. We don't know that. So I don't say it's safer. What I would say is it has less risk for lung cancer, and there's consensus across the medical community and the research community that that's likely true. Now, cancer comes in many forms, too, so I do want to say that lung cancer most associated with cigarette smoking is only one form, and there are many other types of cancer that could be potentially problematic. For instance, I mentioned formaldehyde. Formaldehyde's a known carcinogen, but it tends to affect the upper airways, and potentially nasal epithelial cancers could be impacted by that.
But we don't know yet.
We don't know because chronic disease in human takes a long time to see the overall population effects.
So it could be years before we discover what the effects of e-cigarettes are on the overall health in different parts of the body.
Right, and that's why there are a number of centers sponsored by the FDA around the country that are trying to use a variety of approaches, both acute studies in humans, but also these studies in animal models and cell models to get a grip, or at least a glimpse of maybe what's in store for us. So we use animal models because we can mimic kind of the processes in the human body in a shorter time frame. And our studies tend to suggest that cardiovascular disease is probably not off the table with e-cigarettes. And so, yeah, that's where I...
All right, we're talking with Dr. Dan Conklin from the UofL School of Medicine. Well, let's talk a little bit about cardiovascular disease. What is the study, or what are the studies that you're doing regarding e-cigarettes and their impact on heart health and cardiovascular health?
Yeah, so we have two types of studies. One I already described are chronic studies in animal models of human disease, such as atherosclerosis, and those have tended to support that e-cigarette aerosol exposure does increase that outcome. But we also do acute studies where we're looking at short-term exposures and changes in heart rate and blood pressure. And within those studies of e-cigarette aerosols, we try to look at various constituents of the aerosols that might be driving the effects. And in short, we look at nicotine. So we look at nicotine alone. We look at some of the gases, as I mentioned, formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, crolion, these aldehydes that we think are important, but then also flavors. Because the flavors that are found in e-cig aerosols can be at very high levels, relatively high levels, and they're not approved for inhalation, heating and inhalation. They're generally regarded as safe for ingestion. I think everybody likes a little cinnamon in their thing or a little bit of vanilla in your cookies. This is fine, but we don't really know the effects of these flavorants when you heat them and make them into other things.
So eating them is fine. Smoking them is a different story, or inhaling them into your lungs.
Yeah, we think that's an important consideration. Menthol, of course, is one of these flavors that's been around in conventional tobacco cigarettes for a long time and is associated with deeper breathing and is also present then in e-cig aerosols. So we're a little bit concerned that that could put things where they shouldn't be. Some of the flavorants are buttery flavors. And these compounds are known to cause a disease in workers who work with these compounds, making buttery flavors. Popcorn lung is one of the things.
Popcorn lung?
Popcorn lung. This is a deep...
So the guys that are making Orville Redenbacher's and microwave popcorn are getting sick?
Well, there have been cases associated with workers at these plants with high-level exposures that produce a very rare disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is a deep lung airway disease, not commonly seen. But young individuals at this plant got this, and it was associated with exposure to these buttery flavors. So what we're worried about is buttery-flavored e-cigarette aerosols may be mimicking that same kind of exposure. So there are a number of pulmonary disease experts who are working on that particular aspect of potential flavorant-induced toxicity. We've been studying a variety of those flavors in conjunction with nicotine and in conjunction with these other constituent to see what the acute effects are in the cardiovascular system. And I can say we see a number of effects that probably we can attribute to nicotine, which is known to increase blood pressure in humans and increase heart rate in the short term, and we see some of those similar effects.
And again, that's in mice. We haven't tested them on humans yet, right?
Well, acute effects have been looked at in humans.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a number of locations around the U.S. and in Europe that are studying the acute effects, and I can tell you, even within our own center at Boston University, we've seen that e-cigarette aerosol exposure is associated with endothelial dysfunction, which is a short term for an acute injury to the vascular wall.
And one other thing I want to talk about before you got away, we're talking with Dr. Dan Conklin from UofL, the School of Medicine. One other thing I wanted to talk about was the immune function. How has e-cigarettes impacted any immune function in humans, or do we have any clue yet? Or is that one of the things you're studying?
I think this is one of the things that we're studying in the short term, as well as a number of other groups. And let me just mention that the chronic effects are not clear, but conventional tobacco smoking is associated with chronic infection in the lungs and recurrent infections. And the severity of those infections can be much worse.
And the body can't fight it off.
That's right.
Or has a tough time fighting it
That's
off.
right. It appears that constituents present in cigarette smoke tend to suppress the immune system. So in our acute studies, we tend to see some of the circulating cells you have in your body, which should be at a normal level, become suppressed. Other investigators have tested with short-term e-cig exposure in mice. They then challenged the mice with an influenza virus into the lungs and found that those mice exposed to e-cig aerosol actually got a more severe effect of the influenza and actually more mortality. So there's potentially some similarities with immune suppression with e-cigarettes as we see with conventional tobacco. That's not been shown in terms of chronic epidemiology because we're just not there yet. But it's a warning sign again.
That's what I was just going to get at, but it's a warning sign to folks who do smoke e-cigarettes that if you get the flu or you get pneumonia or you get something else, because you're smoking e-cigarettes, it may suppress your immune system and your body's ability to fight off those infections, correct?
That's what we're worried about right now from the preliminary studies that have been found around the country. The University of North Carolina has also one of these FDA-funded centers. And they've been studying the immune system in the airways and the nasal epithelium of humans who use e-cigarettes, and actually finding that some of the changes that they're observing in the e-cig users are actually more dramatic than cigarette smokers of equivalent age and age-matched individuals. So that's very disturbing as well.
And so the final advice to folks who are trying to figure out, maybe they're cigarette smokers and trying to figure out, should I go to e-cigarettes as a way to be healthier and not have as many health problems, you would say what?
Well, I'm going to parrot what the American Heart Association has recommended as the response to this. For smokers who are trying to quit smoking and other smoking cessation approaches have not worked for them, they should consult with their physician and perhaps give e-cigarettes a try. The studies that have been done on the ability of e-cigarettes to aid cessation are equivocal right now, but some individuals say e-cigarettes have helped them to quit. So I'm not going to say you throw out the baby with the bathwater in that regard. But for people who have never tried a tobacco product,
Just don't do it.
Just don't.
Okay. Dr. Dan Conklin from the UofL School of Medicine, appreciate you being on the show again. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards!